Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Purely OCD. I'm Kelley Franke, and I'm waiting on Lauren, which should be here soon. Cool.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm really hoping it doesn't do the weird audio thing. Should we ask?
Yeah, so we're going to leave the comments on for a few minutes because last week we had issues. There was I guess we were talking over each other, it didn't seem like that on our end, but it
Yeah.
was really bad when we looked at the recording. So if you guys could just give us some feedback and make sure that everything sounds okay and that we're not talking over each other,
That'd be swell.
that'd
Very
be
swell.
fantastic. And then we'll get into the this week's talk.
Except for when we are talking over each other, which does sometimes happen.
Yeah, but this was like weird.
It was weird. It was weird. Well, and there were these long delays where one of us would say something and the other one just would be staring at the other one. It was neat. Oh, Michael
Okay, good.
Schramm. I
I
don't know
love it.
if that's Allie or
I
Maya,
know.
but I'm thrilled you're here too, and that you're
We're
queer.
so thrilled.
So
So
good.
far, so good.
That's so good. Okay, so should we just go ahead and turn off the comments then and
Yeah.
go for it?
Sorry about that, guys. We're gonna turn off the comments.
Hi, Allie. So,
sorry, I thought that was you doing it for some reason. My bad.
No, that's all good. So I'm just gonna say, oh wait, is it off? I'm confused.
No, it's not.
I can't. There's no option for me to turn it off. Oh my God.
Oh wow, you guys, this is super special.
I
Hold
don't
on,
know.
I got it.
Oh, okay.
We don't want to mute you. We're just trying to stay focused, stay on the rails.
We have a hard enough time with the two of us, and throw your comments in the comment box if you have any, because we'd love to hear them.
So this week on Purely OCD, we are going to be talking about exposure and response prevention.
Oh my God, how did I know you were going to do that? Wow.
I think it was like the tone of the voice.
I know. I like it. I was funny because we were talking about it, and we've done past episodes that have obviously spoken a lot about exposure and response prevention, but we have not done an episode that is dedicated to this practice, which is, of course, the center of treatment for OCD. So, yeah.
So, let's talk about it then.
Let's just dive right in, shall we?
Awkward. So go ahead, Lauren. Sorry.
No. So exposure is the process by which we face down the things that give us anxiety. We face down our triggers, right? So this is going to look really different dependent upon the theme of your OCD and which is where if you're interested in learning more, like the past episodes on the different subtypes, we do talk about exposure and response prevention within the context of each of them. But if you, for example, have harm OCD, you might find knives to be very triggering, and you might find yourself avoiding knives, or you might find yourself using knives, but then asking for reassurance that you won't stab somebody, or ruminating, or even like saying a prayer while using the knife in order to prevent the worst from happening. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that if you're avoiding something, of course, we want you to, not be avoiding things, because that's going to limit your life. But then also we want to have you do the response prevention piece as well. So even if you're already doing the thing, chances are you may, be doing a lot of compulsions secondary to doing the things, and that's also problematic, also really going to limit your life. So that's the exposure piece, and I guess I kind of touched on response prevention a little bit, but maybe Kushbal Kelley.
Yeah. So I would just kind of, to piggyback off the exposure piece, there's lots of different types of exposures too.
That's true.
So there's the incidental or in vivo stuff that happens in real life, stuff that you're not planned, right? So it's happening in the moment. It's not on the hierarchy. It wasn't in your exposure log, and that we're just doing that. We're just going live with it.
Surprise!
I'm gonna throw up.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's just like one way of talking about a bigger thing, and that's kind of plays a big role in ongoing recovery too, because that's ultimately what we have to do. Is just, there's going to be triggers that you aren't going to be seeing your therapist anymore, and you're going to be like, oh, there's that feeling, ooh, feel uncomfortable, got to look at it. So whatever your OCD is saying, don't do it, you go, okay, I guess I'm going to do that now. That's my thing.
Yep. Especially
do that.
I do that, especially when it's something that is important to you, right? That's, I think, because it's not like you absolutely 100% of the time have to do everything that is scary to you, but it's, when it's interfering somehow with something that you want to do, or it's trying to like boss you around, it's like, no, bite me. Yeah.
I have so much to say. Yeah. That was inappropriate, so I held it back. Anyways, and then there's these imaginal stories, these like the scripting that you sometimes hear about. And then there's
so let's piece out a little bit like what an imaginal is. Generally it's writing the sort of scary story of the worst case scenario coming to pass. Yeah. And the idea is, because a lot of people come in and they're like, yeah, I do that all the time. Why? I don't need to do that, right? Like, that's what I'm doing in my head constantly, you crazy person, me, the therapist. And I'm like, no. You're not just leaving it at this scary thing could happen. You're then going on and trying to figure out how you would respond to it, or how awful it would be, or trying to fix it or prevent it somehow. We're not doing any of that part, right? Like, so it's telling the story, but also just being like, oh, wow, that's an anxiety-provoking story. I really want to resolve that right now. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fix it.
Right. I always like to throw in there the whole therapist line where it's like, and my therapist told me not to do the compulsions, and I didn't. And it turns out that because I didn't do what I initially thought and I listened to them, that thing happened and the whole world collapsed, right? And also everybody's fear sounds different, because for some people, if we say harm, it might be their harm obsession isn't the worry about hurting somebody and then like feeling awful. It's going to jail. Their whole life is ruined, right? And that's the end of the world for them.
Yes.
So there's definitely variations. You have to really work through what is it that I'm truly scared of in this.
Yep. What's the core fear? What was the thing that I'm truly scared of?
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the sort of imaginal exposure side of things. And then there's
the written exposures, right? Like writing the word over and over.
Saying the word, having reminders of the word. Like when we say the word, like if you are new to this and like, let's say you have, I don't know, POCD, right? Like the word child is likely to be anxiety provoking to you, or even the
pedophile.
Or pedophile, or molester, right? Like all of these words are likely to be anxiety provoking to you. So those would all be words that we could play around with, right? In terms of like, I want to do a nod to just like in vivo exposures that are planned, right? So, for instance, we might have somebody hold a knife.
Yeah.
And just like, you know, that's or hold a knife close to a person that they love, right? That would be a planned in vivo exposure, like in real life, basically exposure. The imaginals, if we can pop back to that for a second, are there because you're not going to do in vivo exposures to everything. That's not the point. We're trying to get you to face the triggers, which sometimes are thoughts and ideas rather than concrete physical things. So
actually, a lot of it is that.
right, all these associations that exist in our mind, and it's like ping, 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 and all of a sudden, yeah, oh, I'm having that
because
thought again.
A lot of times people come in and they're like, well, let me do these, gnarly exposures I hear about. And it's like, well, actually for you, it's going to be, we're going to work more on the reducing of compulsions, the response prevention.
Yeah, it's really important to know how to do response prevention at the beginning, because otherwise you're just going to trigger yourself and do compulsions, which is like insult to injury, really, because it's like,
yeah, you did all the hard work.
Yeah, like you face the thing and then it's like, but I'm just going to do the thing that I was doing that's going to reinforce this and continue this cycle.
Yeah. That said, when you're first starting out doing exposures, you're not going to you will do compulsions. It's more of like if we see a huge bulge or like a flare of excessive compulsions that we're like, okay, we got to reevaluate the intensity of the exposure. We got to reevaluate how you're sitting with, like, how we're being present and not mentally compulsive.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, that's a really good point too, Kelley, like, because oftentimes we start by delaying compulsions or reducing compulsions. It's not like an all or none thing. You don't have to just be like cold turkey stop. It's just we need to make progress away from what you're doing and toward what you want. And it can be totally gradual though.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just a few examples. There's so many other types of like active exposures we could do. But yeah, going into response prevention.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if you saw Kevin Voss's post last week about John Hirschfield, and he quoted him and he said, let's just cut to the chase. Compulsion's bad.
I know. I was like, yeah, that's right on the money.
It's money,
John
man.
Hirschfield, man.
It's simple but true. Is like they're the bad guys. So when we are doing these active exposures, we're bringing up the uncomfortable feelings and thoughts. We are not going to do anything about it. We're not going to do what we typically would do, which is compulse. We can start by delaying. We can start by reduction of compulsions. We can just cold turkey them too, right? It's all dependent on the person, and try not to judge yourself or compare yourself to anybody, because that's not going to help. But ultimately, the response prevention is like 85% of it. That's a random number. I don't have, there's no research to back that up.
I mean, really, it's 100% of it, right? I mean, I don't know, because otherwise, like we were just saying, it's like then you're just triggering yourself and doing compulsions. So like finding some way to do some degree of response prevention is all of it. In fact, it's funny, if you could only do one of the two things in treatment, right? Response prevention 100%, because when you're going throughout your daily life, the most important thing is that you're not capitulating to the behaviors that are keeping you stuck, that are limiting your life.
Yeah. And that's actually what makes it a disorder.
Right. It's
not the intrusive thoughts or the obsessions. It's the compulsions. That's right. Because even after treatment, you will still get intrusive thoughts, unfortunately.
Forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club, guys.
Which is called the club of being human. It's not even the club of OCD. Like, everybody's got them.
Yeah.
Well, the vast majority of people do anyway, depending on the study that you look at.
Ours are a little more intense, but yeah.
Well, they're spicy, man. I mean, actually, speaking of John Hirschfield, I think of that illustration he has in the book, the mindfulness workbook for OCD, which if anyone's looking for a basic, like how OCD works, how ERP works, like great book. That would be like number one recommendation from my end. I think yours is Grayson, but I totally like.
I like both.
Also, yeah.
I think it's much more digestible. The one from Tom and John.
Yeah. So in that book, he's got this image of a bookshelf, and he talks about the fact that people with OCD tend to have like a broader light on this bookshelf. So it's like it's got a larger scope. So they see like more of the fringe thoughts on like the positive, like the nice thoughts, but also more of the negative. They see kind of all of it. They're more aware. It's almost like their peripheral vision is expanded, right? And then people who don't have OCD, the light is narrower, right? So they're not necessarily getting the like really uncomfortable fringe thoughts over here, but they're also maybe going to miss out on like the fun, creative, exciting thoughts on this end of things, which I think is, it's a great way of looking at it.
It really is.
Yeah, because we have creative minds. Not that other people don't have creative minds too. I'm just saying that, like,
We're better.
Oh my gosh.
OCD, people with OCD are better. I'm just kidding. Of course I'm kidding. Hopefully you guys all know my humor by now.
I would hope so. I mean, I do.
Right.
So, I mean, do we want to give more? Oh, wait. Oh, no. We were in the middle of response prevention. Hello.
Yeah.
So no, back on the rails. So like with response prevention, with the compulsion, like with behavioral compulsions, what does that look like?
Well, it depends, right? So we break it down into a few different types that we can just reference it. Everyone's going to call it different, but we have reassurance seeking. So that's when we're asking other people, what do you think? Do you think this is bad? Do you think I should do this? Whatever. Then there's the avoidance. So we're avoiding every trigger, any potential trigger. And then there's the mental compulsions, which are the sneaky ones. They're the ones you don't see, and the ones that are often missed for people. And then there's the very overt ones that are visible. We can all see it, like checking, counting, locking, washing. Yep, all those. So if we're doing exposure and response prevention, let's say for hand washing, and just to mix things up, it's not contamination, it's emotional contamination. So somebody saw somebody and that triggers a person to then think, oh, what if I take on their personality traits? I'm just taking on an example here. And they have to wash, or they feel compelled to wash, right? So it would be like, okay, well, let's go find that person, or let's go write the traits down and read them, whatever it is that person finds anxiety provoking. And now we're going to sit with this discomfort or delay it or minimize it, or even mixing it up in how they're washing in some way. Like we're just trying to break up the cycle a little bit. Delaying's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a one example
of how you do ERP with a behavioral compulsion. Yep, that's solid, man. And if let's say you're a reassurance seeker, and let's throw out a subtype. I'm stuck.
Relationship OCD. Because I feel like we hit everything except, or group.
Well, we didn't do sexual orientation either, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Now they're
coming up.
Our OCD, right? Let's just say that you have a thought like, well, what if I'm not attracted enough to my partner, right? This is one that comes up a lot in the context of relationship OCD. So you think about triggers, like things that lead you to have that thought. And one of the things is looking at Instagram, as a matter of fact, right? You're
Yeah.
scrolling and then you see like some really handsome person of a gender to which you're attracted. And you're like, oh my gosh, but what if I'm not attracted enough to my partner because I find this person attractive and I think I find this person more attractive, right? So
Ooh.
if you know that Instagram is a trigger, that's a great exposure. So we might say, okay, for 10 minutes a day, you're going to scroll Instagram. And then when you have the thought, oh my gosh, what if I'm not attracted enough to my partner? You're just going to go, instead of, and this is where the reassurance seeking comes in, instead of like calling your friend and being like, is it normal if you find other people attractive when you're in a committed relationship, right? Kind of like sneaky, like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about this? Instead of doing that, you're going to actually just go, oh, I don't know. And
Yeah.
that's unnerving. And whew, I'm going to feel my anxiety. What does that
Mm-hmm.
feel like? Breathe in, make space, and then I'm going to continue scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
Continue about the scrolling. In fact, I might breathe while I'm scrolling.
Yeah.
Usually a
Yeah.
good practice, actually, breathing, as it turns out.
Breathing is really solid.
Generally recommended. So that's a like a way that we might see it come up for reassurance seeking.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take mental compulsions?
Yeah, we both probably will. So mental compulsions are, we have a 2 series episodes on this exact thing. So I'm not going to go into too much detail plus time.
Yes.
But sometimes people will um, look at what they like. Let's say like they're anxious. Did I say something that was really offensive?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like their obsession is like saying profanities or racist slurs or homophobic comments, right? Like anything that's like not, it's totally out of line with who this person is. And they were at an event or at work and they're like, okay, I need to remember what I said exactly. So they're bringing it up in their mind. And then they're going, and what was their facial expression like? Did they seem alarmed? Were they laughing after? Okay. So we're trying to retrace, remember exactly to give ourselves reassurance that nothing bad was said.
Right. Right. To resolve that uncertainty.
Right.
So,
But right.
go ahead.
Well, and so like if we call mental compulsions in general, like put a big label of rumination, right? Rumination is this act of where we're trying to figure it out as if there's an end date. There isn't. Rumination keeps going, keeps on. It just gets worse and darker and the hole gets deeper. Abort mission.
Abort, abort, abort.
Yeah, abort mission. And we like to talk about problem solving, which is time limited.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
can be solved because there's
Mm-hmm.
like an actual deadline for something.
And an
Right?
actual problem that can be like, you can't
Right.
resolve
No,
anxiety. That is not a problem, nor
no,
is it something that can be solved.
no, no.
So, okay, but if we go back to this example of somebody who wants to engage in mental review when they're in social situations, because they are afraid that they might have said or might say things that are somehow offensive and harmful to other people, we might say, okay, well, we're going to have you go out, right? We're going to have you go out more. That would be the exposure part. Or we're going to have you think the words that you're scared of saying while you're in public, right?
That's right.
Not like, obviously we're not saying say them, right? Because we don't, again, that's antithetical to your values, who you are, who you want to be. That's not important. But
No.
bringing the thought to mind on purpose and being like, I don't know whether or not that means I said it out loud. Maybe I did, right?
Well, right, because OCD gets really deep in there and it's like, you can't even have that thought or look at an image that reminds you of that thought because then what if you say it and you can't remember if you actually said it? So it really messes things up when you do what Lauren said. And that's good. That's a good thing.
We want to mess things up.
We want that. It's the best.
It's the best thing.
Messing things up.
Love it. So, I mean, obviously, those are only a couple of examples of what the exposure might look like. And then, of course, the response prevention is doing exactly what Kelley said, like drop the rumination, drop the review. We're not going to figure out whether or not I said that. Maybe I did say that. Maybe, you know, and even spoiling the ritual a little bit, too, I think is important here, because oftentimes we get caught up in mental review before we even realize it.
Yeah.
And so saying like, yeah, they laughed, but maybe they were just so shocked that they were trying to hide their shock from me, right? Like really leading back into like, I don't have the answer here. Like there is still a possibility that I said that thing and that they're hyper offended and that I'm a bad person, right?
Yeah. Maybe.
It's my favorite word in the context of recovery.
Yeah, maybe. Or I guess we'll have to find out.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Ooh. Guess we'll see.
It's just saying that I can feel my heart flutter.
Yeah.
Like,
it's all messed up.
Yeah. But it's good. And that's so like a message of hope at the end of all of this, right? Is that by doing this exposure and response prevention, we learn how to be in the face of these feelings that we have been so avoidant of, that have really run the show for a long time, or, you know, have taken over our lives somehow. That's the beauty. So that when you face them in daily life, it's like, oh, you again, as opposed to, oh my gosh, it's the feeling I gotta fix, like Terminator status, right? Like, right? Like, that's me, like killing
it's so true.
The feeling with my eyes.
You did great.
Thanks.
Except it didn't work.
It didn't work, though. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Typical.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, thank you for this as always.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for joining us.
Yep.
And
we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.